Ready? Okay. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. We were discussing here. Yeah. So Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. The last discussion we were saying that look, um, the minimum tuhar according to the Hanafi madhab is 15 days, right? So if a woman bleeds, right? Just a recap of what we done. She bleeds and she stopped bleeding, and then she bleeds within 15 days. Then you have to add the two bleedings up. It will not be a separate bleeding, right? So she bled for 5 days, then she stopped for 13 days, and after 13 days she bled again, right? So then you will add this 5 days and what she bled after 13 days. You will not separate between it. You will not separate between it because it is not a tuhra fasil. It is not a tuhra separation. So I'm saying, so whatever a lady bleeds, or even look at another example just to make this more evident, to make it more glaring. A woman bled for 9 days, right? Now you think, hey, she's finished with the haze. And then she stopped bleeding for 11 days. And then on the like on the 12th day she started bleeding again. Now it will appear to you that her haze was finished for 9 days and she bled after 11 days, 13 days. But no, these bleedings will not be separated. They have to be added because it's not a tuhar fasil, it's a tuhar fasid. It's not a tuhar tam. It's not a complete tuhar that will separate between the two. So you will add the 5 days, you will add 11 days, right? And you also, it means you bled 5 days plus 11 days or 12 days, you bled 17 days. And if you bleed 17 days, what happens? If you got a habit, you revert to your habit. If your habit was 5 days that you bled the previous month, that will be 5 days. Or if you do not have a habit, you normally bleed normally 10 days, then your haze will be full 10 days. Even though this month, it appears that you bled for 5 days. Are you with me? Right? Okay, read that. Okay, just read from the beginning again. وَالطُّهْرُ إِذَا تَخَلَّلَ. Just read from there just to. Yeah. So same thing what I explained now exactly. وَالطُّهْرُ, the clean period, إِذَا تَخَلَّلَ, when it comes between two bleeding, في مدة الحيض, in the time of hayd, right? فهو كالدم المتوالي, it is like continuous bleeding. And what I mean في مدة الحيض, when you had your hayd, right? And you had your hayd, and it is the time of your hayd, and it's not a tuhar fasil. It is not a tuhar that separates between it. Carry on. Zakar. So this is one of the riwayats of Imam Abu Hanifa, rahimahullah ta'ala, meaning that there are several riwayats, but this is the preferred riwayat. There's a fatwa upon that anything within that days you will join it, right? Carry on. Yeah, this is here. ووجه أن استيعاب الدم مدة الحيض ليس بشرط بالإجماع. That for you to see blood all the time is not a condition. It is not a condition. As long as what? As long as there's no 15 days in between, it will be considered as a continuous bleeding. And this is ijma upon this, right? Yeah. So long as at the beginning the blood was there and within the period of haze, the blood was there at the end, it will be considered as a continuous bleeding. Kan nisab if is babi zakat, it's similar to the nisab in babu zakat. I explained to you that you have nisab at the beginning of the year, during the course of the year, even when below the nisab, even if it went below the nisab, doesn't matter. So long as from the time you got it nisab at the end of the year, right? So that's pretty clear, right? Carry on. Now with today's lesson, right? The start and end. Yes, this lesson while we're discussing this, Mister. Yes, if you go to zero, you go to zilch, then you restart again. You understand what I'm saying? So you had the nisab in 10 grand. So so after 10, the first time, obviously I will say the beginning of the year because your beginning of the year starts when you get money for the first time. When you get zakat nisab for the first time in your life, that is your nisab, right? So you got 10 grand, right? I think it was the answer. I think there was 9 grand at the moment. So then it went down to 6, 5, 4, 3, 2. Even if it went to 500 rand, but you still got an original of that nisab, right? So long as from the time now it went to 500, it went to 100, it went to 200 even. But now when one lunar year culminates, and at the end of one new lunar year, you got nisab again, then you will give zakat. But if it went to zero during the year, you had zilch rands, nothing, then it will cancel out that nisab. Now you'll wait till you get a new nisab again and you start afresh again, right? Come again, if you what you say, if you right. So when you say what you say, you go to zero or you still have something. You have something, right? When your year comes here, yeah, you have nothing. No zakat. Yes, see, you must have it at the beginning of the year and you must have it at the end of the year. Is it in kitab? See, no, you don't have to have the full thing so long as you got what is above the nisab. Yeah, well, technically you are right because as long as you got above the nisab, if you go below the nisab, at the end of the year, there's no zakat upon you. So see, there's a CC. There's kan nisabi fi babi zakati. Like nisab must be at the beginning of the year and it must be at the end of the year. Okay, the question here is if you got zero, but if you got if you go to zero, but you got jewelry, right? Yes, good question. So here the lady saying if you got cash at the beginning of the year, right? So you add all your stuff together. There's no differentiation. Say for instance, I first mentioned the old school, and I'll mention an example. In the beginning of the year, you had cash and jewelry together that stayed together jointly. They equal the nisab, right? Jointly, they equal the nisab, right? So during the course of the year, you had zero cash, which is unlikely. Nobody, I don't think today's age anybody can have zero cash, unless maybe your debt is more than your cash, but you still got your jewelry. So now comes the question is, this would only be applicable if your jewelry itself doesn't make the nisab. But in all probability, your jewelry will make the nisab. In all probability, your own jewelry will make the nisab. So let's look at both scenarios. You had cash, which is the likely scenario. Whatever year you was, you had cash and you had jewelry. So, so during the course of the year, your jewelry, your cash went to zero, right? But your jewelry is still the value of nisab. And then when your whatever your year is, it culminates. You got the cash and the jewelry. So even though your cash went to zero, and right, but your jewelry was still zakat al nisab, right? So you'll have to give zakat on both, right? But let's say the, there's a scenario where you say your cash went to zero, right? If your cash never go to zero, then obviously it falls under this masala. That's quite clear. We're saying you don't have to have the full amount. So you will look at the ulama normally explain that, like as I said, when you working out your zakat, then you do not differentiate like this is a separate zakat nisab is separate, gold nisab is separate. So I pay separate upon this, I pay separate upon this. You add everything up. You look at the value of everything, and if everything jointly makes the nisab, then you say you pay zakat. And if everything, so if this is easier for us because we know we can attach a rand value, we can attach a rand value to our gold. So I've got, for example, 6,000 rands, right? And I know my jewelry is 4,000 rand or 5,000 rand. So it's pretty simple because we're gonna work all our nisab out. Look, in previous times, there was no like silver and gold was a separate currency on its own. So there wasn't a it's a third currency to peg it against. As I'm saying, but yeah, because we've got a third currency to peg it against, it makes it very much more easier. All we do is we just say, like I always said, we look at jointly this. So since we are considering all together, we're looking at our gold and silver together, we're looking at our rands together, right? So we will say that you qualified by looking at them jointly. So that means they're all one. So even if you got some jewelry during the course of the year, that means your nisab never diminished completely. It was still there. You say you never go to zero. So you're still in the running. So when your year complete, you have to give zakat on the whole amount, right? That's because we are amalgamating everything, right? Okay, carry on. But inshallah, you never start the kitab with zakat already. I think it falls under our part one, eh? Zakat comes, yeah, inshallah. So those that are with us for Hidaayah, we'll be doing the kitab with zakat also, inshallah. We'll get more clarity on that. And then always I try to the best of my ability, when we're doing the masal, although this is classical books, I try from my side, if I know the contemporary version of events, I try to share it with you. If I don't know it, I try to find out and share with you. Right, anyway, carry on. You got the anna tuhra al-mutakhallila. Okay, that makes more sense. I just got the tuhar, right? So, what Abu Yusuf, and also Narina Tarif Abu Yusuf over riwayat and Abi Hanifa, the also riwayat Waqila, and his last statement, it said his last statement, Anna tuhar al-mutakhalila, the intervening tuhar, إذا كان أقل من 15, the same thing, when it's lesser than 15 days, لا يفصل, you don't separate, it's one bleeding. Same thing what you're saying on above, right? وكل كالدم المتوالي, as though she was bleeding consecutively. لأنه طهر فاصل. This is not a complete tuhur. It is, although it seems like a break in. See, I told you every word has a literal translation and it has a technical translation, right? Like you go to salat means to pray, but in shirk we speak about salah, we speak about ruku, sajda, wudu, etc., etc., right? So tuhur means break. So yeah, it is a break, but it's not that break which is considered in Shariat. It is not that break which is considered in Shariat. A break is only when it is 15 days complete. So it's a tuhur. It is a tuhur because, like, look at the example. A woman bled for 5 days, then she was clean for 14 days, then she bled again. It's a tuhur. It is a break. She was clean. But it is not the break that we are concerned with. We're looking for the break which is 15 days. Any break less than 15 days, according to us, not a break. So it is lughatan. It is lexically is a break. But in Shari terminology, it is not a break. So you can say it's a tuhre lughwi or a tuhre fasid. It's not a tuhre sahih or tuhre tam. You can't remember this word. You come across this word, right? It's a tuhre fasid because it is lesser than 15 days. فيكون بمنزلة الدم. So it is as though she was bleeding continuously. So as though I told you she bled for 5 days, then she was clean for 14 days, and then she bled on the 15th day. So as although she bled for that, 5 plus as though she bled for 20 days, which is more than 20 days. He is saying, فَيَكُونُ بِمَنْزِلِ الدَّمِ, as though she was bleeding all that time. So if it's more than 10 days, of which it is, you revert to that. But right, وَالْأَخْذُ بِهَذَا الْقَوْلِ أَيْسَرَ. He's saying, obviously, they don't mention the other aqwal, but you can understand. He say, take this call, it's easier, right? وَتَمَامُ يُعْرَفُ فِي كِتَابِ الْحَيْضِ. And more of this detail you have to do in the Kitab al-Hayd, right? Now, if you look at the next ibarat, it's basically extension. Read the next ibarat, it's explaining the same thing also. Yeah. وأقل طهر 15 يوم. The Hanafi madhab, the minimum of tuhur that we will separate two bleeding, same thing. It is 15 days. هكذا نقل عن إبراهيم النخعي. Like this is narrated from Ibrahim Nakhai. Remember, Ibrahim Nakhai was the ustad of Imam Abu Hanifa, right? Was the ustad of the ustad of Imam Abu Hanifa, right? Right? وأنه لا يعرف إلا توقيفا. So what are you making reference to in that part? وأنه لا يعرف إلا توقيفا. If you're smart, you catch on what he's saying is, look here, even the Imam Ibrahim Nakhai may not have a sanad. He can't say, I heard this from this person, who heard this from the Sahabi, who heard it from the Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Doesn't matter. Because it's a quantum. And a quantum is not something you analogically or logically deduce. A quantum is something you hear. So even if the Imam Nakhai was the ustad of Imam Hanifa, he never say that I heard this from my ustad, heard from the Nabi. We will naturally by default understand that he heard this from his ustad, who heard from his ustad, who heard from the Nabi. So all things which are not logically deduced, even though people do not mention the Senate, but it goes without saying that they heard it, it comes from the Nabi, right? Then the next masla, وَلَا غَايَةَ لِأَكْثَرِهِ. That's an interesting masla. A difficult masla in the Hanafi madhab. See, وَلَا غَايَةَ لِأَكْثَرِهِ. There is no limit to its maximum. There is no limit to its maximum, what difficulty can you perceive? Let's ask our online listeners, what difficulty do you perceive here for a woman? If we say there's no limit to the maximum or to her, come, let's see who can tell us. Anybody, I'm opening the floor to the online people. What difficulty is it? ولا غاية لأكثره لأنه يمتد إلى سنة وسنتين, because sometimes it can pull, it can drag on for 1 year or 2 years. Lukman, what difficulty will there be in that? Tell me, what difficulty is there in that? What difficulty is there in that? Tell us what difficulty is in the fact that in the Hanafi madhab there is no limit to the maximum of a tuhar. Let's see. Okay, it's an illness or it's a haid, it's not haid. Okay, that's right what you're saying. But my question is, what challenge does it face that in the Hanafi madhab there is no limit to the tuhar? What challenge does a woman, Hanafi woman, face with this? That we say there's no limit to a tuhar. A tuhar can go on for 1 year, 2 years. What difficulty does a Hanafi woman face in this? Pretty simple. When I give you the answer, you're going to kick yourself. Maybe I must offer 100 reward, 20 pounds reward to the people who answer. What difficulty is there? There's no limit to a tuhar. A tuhar can carry on for 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, as long as a woman is bleeding, as a woman is bleeding. What difficulty is there? Anybody? Nobody? The difficulty is a woman will have a long protracted iddah, right? Remember, if a woman has been divorced, right? Woman, what is the iddah of divorce? She must have 3 hayd, right? So she must sit, a woman will get a talaq in her clean period, and she must experience 3 cycles. And when she comes from the third cycle, she is clean and she is free. Now, according to Hanafi madhab, there's no limit to the tuhur. So here, he talaqed her in her clean period, right? So now she's waiting for her hayz. Hayz is not coming. Her hayz is not coming. Forget about 3 hayz. Her first hayz is not coming. And there are actually people like that. I promise you, there are people like that. I actually got some questions. I got some questions from some people. They say, hey, my tuhur is so many years, 1 year now. I never bleed at all. I never. And normally, you know what happens is, you see some these ladies also. Some of them they don't eat well, né? And they hardly eat, and they're very very thin, and they're very very weak in it. They hardly eat. They're scrawny and they're thin. Then they don't get highs because your body needs to produce that eggs in your body and everything. So now that you understand what I'm saying, so I promise you there are people who actually don't. One is, you mustn't confuse the Aisha. I'll explain it myself. One is the Aisha is a woman is menopausal, right? Once a woman is menopausal, uh, that is she's over 55 years and then she didn't get high. That's different. There you say that if a husband passes away, it's no 4 months, 10 days, right? But if a woman is menopausal, then 3 months will be her iddat of talaq. Are you with me? Follow nicely. If a woman is already menopausal and she is divorced, then her talaq will be 3 months. But here, a woman is not menopausal. It's just that in technical terms, it's called here mumtaddatu tuhri. What is she? She's called mumtaddatu tuhr. She has I prolonged to her. So I told you the difficulty is this: a woman, she was divorced, and maybe okay, she was divorced enough to her, she had a haid, but now the second to her is not ending. It's not ending. And look what the kitab says here. We say, وَلَا غَايَةَ لِأَكْثَرِهِ. There is no limit to the maximum time of a tuhar. So maybe her iddat will be 2 years, her iddat will be 3 years, her iddat will be 4 years. And what if she's still young? And what if she's beautiful? And what if she rich? What will happen? She will be a fitna. She will be a fitna for herself. She will be a fitna for other people, etc. So what do you do here? What do you do under the circumstances? Unfortunately, in the Hanafi madhab, there is nothing you can do. Okay, maybe in today's day and age now, you get medicine that you can take, etc. You can bring the flow on, etc. So that is one option. You take some medicine. The other option, Fatwa Dar Ulum Zakaria Mufti Razaul Haq mentions there that the Maliki Madhab, I told you, we don't just hop between madhabs, ne? There must be a strong necessity. And here there is a strong necessity. I told you, imagine a young woman, pretty woman, she's rich, all the men are running after her. And here we're telling her, Marv, Ben, your haze is not finished. You have to stay in haze. You're still in Iddat for 1 year. You are in Iddat for 2 years. You are in Iddat for 3 years. It will be a great fitna for her. It will be a great trial for her. So there, in Fatwa Darum Zakaria, it is mentioned there, she must go to a Maliki Mufti. And a Maliki Mufti will give fatwa on the Maliki Mazhab. And I think if I remember correctly, it says in the Maliki Mazhab, the maximum of hayd will be, I'll just double check it again. It's the maximum of iddat will be 1 year. That if a woman is mumtadda to tuhur, if she has a prolonged tuhur, then the maximum iddat will be 1 year. I'll check it again tonight. So there in Fatwa Darum Zakaria it mentioned that you can, because of the necessity, you'll get a fatwa from a Maliki Mufti. In the Maliki Mazhab, the maximum hayd for a mumtadda to tuhur is 1 year. Okay, anyway, coming back to the kitab. Okay, so nobody got that, so I can put my 500 bucks back in my pocket. Right. وَلَا غَايَةَ لِأَكْثَرِهِ. So there is no limit to the maximum of the tuhur. So لأنه why يمتد, it continues إلى سنة to 1 year وسنتين or 2 years, right. فلا يتقدر بتقدير. So it will not be fixed with a fixed amount, right. So I told you 2 ways. If a woman, and it does happen, I promise you it does happen. I've come across people who send me questions. I'm 1 year bleeding. I'm sorry, 1 year I never bleed. I never get my eyes for 1 year. So I tell you medicine, or otherwise get in contact with the Malik Mufti, right? So فلا يتقدر بتقدير, right? إلا إذا استمر بها الدم. So what is saying, this ibarat here is, I told you, इसमें पेचीदगी है. This is a bit intricate. Uh, what is saying there first? Let's understand what is saying. That you do not fix the tuhar. You do not fix a tuhar. There's no limit. And the only time you'll fix a tuhar is where a woman, she started with a clear habit. And after having a clear habit, she started bleeding continuously. Then we will go revert to a previous habit. Here in the kitab, they give the example. They say, this ibarat, I told you, it's a bit tricky, that ibarat. Say, what we call a mubtadi'ah. What is a mubtadi'ah? A mubtadi'ah is that girl, young girl who bleeds for the first time, right? So say a mubtadi'ah, she bled the first time, she bled for um, 10 days, right? And after 10 days, she had a protracted tuhar for 1 year. 1 whole year she never bleed, right? And then after 1 year, she started bleeding continuously after that. After 1 year, she started bleeding continuously. So what we'll do here, we'll say for the second year, that first 10 days of the Islamic month or Islamic year will be a haze. And even though she's bleeding for the rest of the whole year, she's bleeding or she's spotting or whatever, there's no 15 days in between. We'll say that the rest of the year is what? It is also a tohar, right? So that's how we'll fix it. So this is what I mean. We will not fix it except when the blood is continuous. Then we will fix it. And I gave you the example is there. But at the end, even though this example is given there, Sahib says you are zalika fi kitab al. But at the end of that, these complex masail, you'll have to look at the kitab al, and you will have to revert to a mufti that is proficient in the masail of hayd. Right. وَدَمُ الْإِسْتِحَاذَةِ كَالرُّعَافِ, and the blood of istihada is like a nosebleed. Like I told you, it is like just another break of wudu. I told you, many women, they misunderstand this. They think if you got istihada, you are by default a ma'zura. No, having istihada does not make you by default a ma'zura. Still, the normal laws of ma'zura applies. You must be bleeding for a whole salat time where you cannot find 5 to 7 minutes when you can make wudu, right? So it's just like a no bleed. Like la yamna as-sawma wala salat. Although that's not the point is being highlighted. The main point is being highlighted in the kitab is la yamna as-sawma, that bleeding here will not stop you from fasting, right? Wala salat will not stop you from salat. Wala al-waqat will not stop you from working, because of Nabi Sallallahu statement, tawadda'i, right? That if you got istihada, you are bleeding continuously, you just finish tawadda'i, make wudu, wasalli, and read your salah. وَإِنْ قَطَرَ الدَّمُ عَلَى الْحَصِيرِ, even though the blood is flowing on the mat, so much you're flowing so profusely, you still have to read your salah, right? So this just means like no matter how much blood comes, but if it's not your time for haze, it's not your adat, whatever, according to the laws what we done, then you will disregard it. Okay, time is up. We'll stop there. We shall continue tomorrow, inshallah. Plus, subhanallah wa bihamdihi, subhanakallah wa bihamdika wa nashhadu an la ilaha illa anta nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilayk. Did I explain the question right? Did I tell you?